And good morning, everybody. This is Vinny Milady Law, the strongest name in the law. The date now is January 13th, 2021. I believe today is Thursday. This is the first ever video from Savannah, Georgia that we're doing here in Milady Law. I'm not sure if you've been following the videos, but what we have been doing is we've been basically scouting properties. At some point, we're going to be offering what's known as Milady Estates. We're going to be trying to offer as an alternative also as well, just because, we're always looking to deliver, always getting involved in business, to have locations, choice locations around the world, really pretty good looking locations in which you can come for a visit, you can come for, when Airbnb is really not something you want to do, you want to do an alternative, and you can visit on your vacation spots, very nice areas, very nice communities, something very exciting to look forward to. All right, so let's get down to it. This particular video, well, first and foremost, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go down below to the little red box and subscribe now. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you sign up for the newsletter. Go to www.miladylaw.com, www.miladylaw.com, and make sure you sign up for the newsletter, so this way you're always in the know and you're up to speed with everything. Okay, so this video is, I wanted to write about this. I wanted to speak about this because you hear this a lot, right? So as a lot of you know, I'm very active in lawsuits with the hospitals, very active in lawsuits with the nurses. I'm very active in privacy and disability in general with people. And a lot of times what you hear is, you're disclosing my personal information. This is a HIPAA violation where people go to their employers. While there are many avenues you can go to, while there are many paths you could take, if you have a privacy violation against your employer, there's many ways you can go. HIPAA is not one of them, okay? So I just wanted to make this video to convey to everybody what exactly HIPAA was, and what it applies to, and how it applies in this context, because this is the context in which it comes up all the time. So I just want to take a brief moment to discuss this. All right, so HIPAA, right? So what does HIPAA stand for? So a lot of you, I see emails, HIPPA, but that's actually not correct. So HIPAA, HIPAA, never mind the great accent. HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accounting Act, HIPAA, HIPAA. Okay, so this is the statutory scheme that the federal government has. You can find it at 45 CFR 160. CFR stands for the Code of Federal Regulations. HIPAA focuses on three particular, what we'll call buckets. HIPAA focuses on privacy, HIPAA focuses on security, and what to do in an instance of breach. Okay, so for this video, we're just going to focus on privacy because security is going to be outside of the purview of what most employees would be, or most patrons would be asserting. And breach is, that's after the fact. That's how a company or how a covered entity, under this statute would respond to a breach incident. So, okay, so first and foremost, let's just kind of go through it, right? So who does HIPAA apply to? This is the key question. So everybody that's watching this video, the one takeaway I want you to all understand, HIPAA applies in just three situations. It applies to health plans. It applies to health care clearinghouses. Those are kind of like, like your broker, your HMOs, your administrators for healthcare stuff. And, where brokers some information data also. And certain healthcare providers who engage in certain financial administrative transactions electronically, and those electronic transactions, for those which standards have been adopted by the Secretary of the HHS and the HIPAA, billing and fund transfers. That's a lot of fancy language, basically, to say your doctor and how they bill you. Okay, so three buckets, right? Who does HIPAA apply to? Health plans, healthcare clearinghouses, and healthcare providers, including their billing. Okay, so those are the three buckets. If you do not fall under one of those three buckets, if the person you're saying is violating your privacy isn't one of those three companies, one of those three entities, HIPAA is not for you, okay? I'll explain a little bit more going forward. But so what does HIPAA do, right? So, oh, by the way, if you want to find these specific statutes, 45 CFR 164-104 that talks about applicability, and then 45 CFR 164-500, which is an extended version of applicability. So this is also known as the privacy rule, okay, the HIPAA privacy rule. So what HIPAA privacy rule, the intention was to establish a national standard in how to protect an individual's, individual identifiable health information, also known as PII, your personally identifiable information, also known as PHI, your protected health information. All those variations to identify an individual's health information. Your medical history, whether you're sick, what conditions you have, how long you've been on medication, etc. Okay? So the rule provides things like safeguards. It sets limits on what could be set, conditions. It has, it's a very large statute. It's a lot of information. So just keep in mind the big takeaways. For those covered entities, it provides safeguards to protect your information. It provides rights over that, who controls that information. It provides a security standard. And it provides something for what happens in the event of breach. Okay? These three entities, remember the three entities, the health plans, the healthcare clearinghouses, and the healthcare providers. These three entities are considered covered entities. These are the only covered entities under HIPAA, okay? So remember, if someone is sharing your medical information, sharing your confidential information, HIPAA is not, if it's not one of those three entities, HIPAA is not where you go, okay? All right. So there also are exclusions. So even if you are a covered entity, there's a litany of exclusions that they could choose from, that these entities can do, that they could avoid the requirements, right? So I pulled out a couple of them. I don't want to be exhausted. I mean, there's a lot of them, but a couple of them. If the disclosure is necessary to carry out the treatment, right? So if Dr. A goes to Dr. B or some unknown vendor that maybe is providing equipment, that disclosure is necessary to carry out the treatment, so it's okay, right? If the disclosure is to actually meet the individual themselves, that's a no-brainer. Vinny Miletti has a sickness, the doctor talks to Vinny Miletti, he doesn't need consent to talk to me, right? That's a no-brainer. If this is a little more complicated, this one is if disclosure is incidental to an already permitted exception. So what does this mean? Let's use disclosure. Let's use if disclosures to the individual themselves. Let's say I go to the doctor. I have my son or daughter with me. I don't know, whatever. Say I have a son or daughter. Doctor tells me something. Discloses my daughter hears it too. My son hears who's in the room with me. That is incidental to an already permitted exception. Therefore, it's there's an exception. Sorry. If the disclosure is authorized by the person directly, obviously same aspect. If the disclosure is necessary for national security, it's important. Okay, so if I don't know, you have to, if there's a dental record for like a terrorist or something that needs to be disclosed, that's fine. It's national security, same thing for law enforcement. If it's required for law enforcement, dental records to connect a rapist in the neighborhood, it's fine. So, the point is that there are a lot of exceptions, a lot of exclusions to the privacy rule, that even if you are a covered entity, one of the three covered entities, you have exclusion there. Like, you could still disclose it. All right. Big takeaway here. This is the most important part of this video. Most important part of this video. Because this is what I want everybody to understand. Because I just gave you a lot of data. 90% of you aren't going to understand it. It's fine. That's what a lawyer's here for. I just try my best to convey it. Watch the video a few times. Read the comments. Read the text. Where does HIPAA not apply? Where does it expressly not apply? And I pick situations that I have, told my clients it does not apply here. Let's not make this argument. Where does HIPAA not apply? HIPAA does not apply for, ready for this one? Restaurants, retail, entertainment, and theme parks. Every time you go into a restaurant in New York City and they ask you for your Vax card and you come back and you say, no, that's my confidential medical information, you're violating HIPAA. They're not violating HIPAA. HIPAA does not apply to them. The privacy rule does not prohibit individual persons or private businesses from making these kind of queries, from asking these kind of questions. HIPAA only applies to covered entities. Remember the health plans, the healthcare clearinghouses, and the healthcare providers. And because the privacy rule doesn't regulate any of the acts of these private entities, HIPAA is not where you go. Now, there could be other issues. We're saying there could be ADA issues. There could be other non-approved medical discussions. That's a different ballgame. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying this HIPAA does not apply here. So restaurants, retailers, establishments, theme parks, number one. Number two, employers. If you work, the privacy rule does not protect employment records. If it's considered an employment record, it will be excluded. It is not subject to HIPAA. So your employer asks you for a medical note, and you disclose, and the medical note is disclosed, whatever the case is. Not a HIPAA violation. You might have an ADA violation. You might have something else. There are certainly other statutes. HIPAA is not where you go with that one. So, your employee can ask you for doctor's notes. Your employee can ask you for proof of sickness, whatever the case is, and their own employment records. So that's fine. That could be found in CFR 160, 103, 164, 512, those two sections. And finally, elementary schools and secondary schools. For 99.9999% of the time, your school is not covered. It's not a HIPAA covered entity. 99.9% of the time. There may be instances where a certain part of it is covered. So, for instance, if the school has a healthcare provider on staff for the students, maybe it's a really aggressive sports school, and they really want to have doctors for students on hand. That's different. That you'll find that aspect is covered under HIPAA. But then if it's subject, there's an exclusion not under HIPAA, but under something known as the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, that will further permit the disclosure of these records because it's education records. Okay, so the 3 points where HIPAA expressly does not apply that I need everybody to understand: schools, elementary and secondary schools, employment, your employer, and the New York key to the city, the restaurants, entertainment, and inside stuff, and theme parks. Sorry. I yawn a lot in these. It's funny. I yawn a lot in these videos. I don't know. I yawn a lot here. Okay. I don't sleep much. That's why. All right. Okay. So where does HIPAA apply, right? So if you're determined to stick somebody on a HIPAA situation, like if this is really what you want to do, you need to be more focused, right? So HIPAA will apply to your doctor. So let's say your employer calls your doctor, your medical provider, and your medical provider gives your employer everything. Your employee is not the one that's in trouble. Your medical provider is in trouble. So, that rule does apply to your medical provider because for one, they're a covered entity, and two, also, that's exactly who HIPAA was. That's exactly the way HIPAA was intended to prohibit that particular practice. So. All right, so I guess the final point I just want to say is, how is HIPAA enforced, right? So HIPAA is not enforced on, I'm pretty sure there's no private cause of action. I'm pretty sure HIPAA is only enforced by the Department of Health and Human Services, by the HHS, or by a state comparative agency. So New York has their own HHS. That is the enforcement arm of it. So, there's no not that I know of a private cause of action for it, and not that you should anyway, because these kind of violations, they're not money pits, they're not like gold mines for you. But okay, so that's where we are. So let's just kind of briefly go through what we spoke about real quickly for the moment. All right, so we said, what is HIPAA, right? HIPAA is a national scheme meant to harmonize things like privacy, security, and what to do in the event of breach with your healthcare, with your private medical and healthcare information. Okay, it's found in 45 CFR 160, and then the other subsections underneath that. Who does HIPAA apply to? HIPAA applies to health plans, healthcare clearinghouses, healthcare providers, and also to in the billing of that healthcare provider stuff. That's found in 164, 104, 45 CFR 164, 104. You know, again, you have to be a covered entity. Even if you are covered entity, there are certain exclusions. If disclosure is necessary to carry out treatment, if it's business records, if disclosures to the individual themselves, if the disclosure is authorized by a person directly, if disclosure is incidental, if disclosure is necessary for national security or law enforcement. These are all permitted exceptions that there is no HIPAA privacy. There is no like HIPAA enforcement on them. And also keep in mind where HIPAA expressly does not apply, where it is irrelevant HIPAA, is elementary and secondary school, employers, and you know, key to the city, New York, retail, indoor dining, you know, indoor theme parks, whatever, entertainment. Finally, you know, for the moment, where there still is a way to apply HIPAA. Let's say, like to your employers, you just got to be a little more focus on what the doctor is disclosing as opposed to what the employer is asking. There are other laws and rules in place to go after the owners for privacy violations, but HIPAA is not one of them. So stay away from HIPAA. HIPAA, generally speaking, is enforced by HHS, Health and Human Services. I don't think there's a private cause of action. I could be wrong. I don't think there is. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but there's no like private enforcement. It's got to come from HHS. So that's very key here too. So that also tells you in terms of litigation, it wouldn't be very effective anyway, because anything that requires to be enforced through just the agency is going to be a problem for plaintiffs. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope there's a good takeaway in this. You know, I caution you all before you start throwing with confidence HIPAA comments to your employers, to the restaurants, to your teachers. I hope you take a moment to think about it. I mean, again, there are other laws you could cite to, so there's no lack of laws that you can't cite to, no lack. But HIPAA is not one of them. So if you have any questions, obviously, you know, check the, let me know in the comments below. I was hoping to have a shorter video, but you know, this is a very important concept, and I really made sure I wanted to get it out there. This causes a substantial amount of anxiety for people and gives a substantial amount of certainty for people about what's a violation when there should be no certainty. And you know, and then you wonder why the lawsuits still go very well. If your attorney is telling you that you have a great HIPAA case, you probably have a problem. So unless they're paying attention, which I don't think they are. So okay, again, you know, sign up to the newsletter, subscribe below. Email us, contact us, reach out to us. We're more than happy to help with any situation you might have. If you have any questions, concerns, of course, we're here. Yours in laws, love, and lifts. All the best to you all. Have a great new year. Have a great year in 2022. Hopefully it's better than the first one, and more to come. So have a beautiful day from this beautiful Savannah, Georgia house down here, which will soon be available once it's fully furnished, which is why I'm here to make sure everything gets done in here for the next couple weeks. So, all right, have a beautiful day. More to come.